March and then end in mid-April. That's, I don't know how much we learn in that. Okay. So any other questions anyone has on mind before we start our syllabus? Okay. So this is your unit 1. We are going to look at the cloud reference architecture, and so there are two parts in unit 1: cloud reference architecture and cloud security. So we are going to begin with the cloud reference architecture. Okay. So I'll be kind of running through some basics, and so basically some of a lot of it, whatever is there in the reference architecture, some of it you have already done. So that's why we need to brief up, summarize whatever we have, whatever our understanding of cloud is. Okay. So before we get into the subject, we have to know what cloud is, right? And you'll have gone through 2 semesters, semester 2, semester 3 on cloud. So can anyone tell me what cloud means to you so far? No, don't look at your, on the internet some resource. What is your understanding of cloud so far? Like, what you have understood what cloud is? So can anyone just type out the answers or speak out? It's better if they speak out. So what cloud is? That's the question. Can anyone answer? When you think about cloud, what do you think? Cloud is a what?
A storage where we can use like resources can be used everywhere, anywhere.
Okay. So
From my understanding, cloud is a massive network of data centers that offers user services, and it's used for many tasks that users used to do locally, but now they can leverage cloud and do it using their mobile phones without having much infrastructure in their hand, without having much infrastructure physically, but having the capability of using great infrastructure using just their mobile phones.
okay. Yeah, so all of it is part of the cloud, whatever you have mentioned. Anything else that an umbrella computer under which all machine runs? You can access your file anywhere. Okay, so an umbrella computer. Okay, it's a new term I have heard. Umbrella computer. Umbrella computer under which, okay, all VMs run. It's a good view. I like that view. You can access files anywhere. Very good. Anything else comes to your mind when you think about cloud? We talk about AWS, we talk about Azure. What else services come to your mind when you talk about AWS? Or if you have done Azure, then what else services come to your mind? What are terms you have heard about? You're looking all over the internet and looking at people talking about AWS, people talking about cloud. What all services are there? We spoke about services, right? So what are services? What is the name of the services? Anyone remembers?
EC2 service, S3 service, Lambda.
Very good, yeah. S3 service, Lambda, right? So EC2 is basically, it provides VMs, right? Virtual machines. S3 is a storage service, VM service. Then Lambda is a code implementation service. So you can write your program in Node.js, you can write your program in Python, you can write your program in Go, and maybe other languages that it supports. Lambda lets you write. It is a backend REST service, right? So Beanstalk, RDS, very good. So those are the other services also. RDS, Beanstalk. So Beanstalk helps you create websites. RDS is your database software, something like we have Oracle or SQL Server. All those are databases. So we get all kinds of services, right? We get databases, we get websites, we can write backend REST services using Lambda. You can have storage to store all your files, and you can create virtual machines, and you can do anything and everything. So very good. I will like. Seems like you'll know. That's good. Okay, so any migration, very good. So migration services are available in cloud, where we migrate from one cloud into another cloud, or one data center into another data center, private cloud into public cloud. We are shifting things. We are shifting the data, we are shifting our files, we are shifting our applications. So migration service is also part of the cloud. So that's very nice. I like it. Okay, so now I'm going to go back, and initially when I started your lecture for the first time, I had asked a question. When you think about a computer machine, what all is part of the computer machine? When you think about a computer machine, any computer, what all is there? What all things are there? Mouse. So those are peripheral devices. Okay, so we have already gone through this, but we just want to go again. on this. So there are peripheral devices like mouse, keyboard, printer, all this is one. RAM, okay, RAM is a very big main component, right? RAM is there. Motherboard, okay. So in motherboard we have a processor, right? So processor is also another important component. And what else? Fans, okay. So those are the electronics that is working. External devices, good. HDD, right? So that is what. So there is storage. Hard disk, right? HDD, or you have a HDD technology. So usually your computer has a memory, has a processor, has a storage. Any machine, when we talk about a machine, computer machine, we are talking about if peripheral devices are not there, it may be okay, but processor is important for the machine to run. Temporary memory is important, and hard disk, right? To boot your operating system to run the actual physical machine, you require the storage also. So RAM, the memory is important, the processor is important, the storage is important. So now I'm going to ask a, so this is your computer, think this is your laptop, okay. So this is your keyboard, it has a yellow color, looks very nice. So imagine this is your computer. My question is your computer a cloud? So whatever your answer is, answer and give me the reason though, okay? Why are you saying is your computer a cloud? Because it has storage, processor, memory. So what's the answer? Anyone? Okay, no. Any reason, Isha, why no? Why it is not a cloud? Okay, Aditya says yes. Okay, Isha says it cannot be accessed. Okay, accessed by whom? Accessed by users can access content on the PC devices from multiple computers using web browser, while mobile apps provide access. Right. Both the points are actually valid. What Aditya is also saying seems valid to me. What Isha is also saying valid to me, like using Google Drive, Microsoft phone. We need to physically go to the computer. Okay, that's a good point. We need to go physically, need to go to the computer. So basically you are emphasizing the point of ubiquitous. What Isha is saying, it is not available anywhere. Ubiquitous means to be available anywhere on any device. And the way we do it is we use HTTP internet, to reach out. So from that perspective, you can say it is not ubiquitous in a way, not totally ubiquitous, not available anywhere. That is good point. And but at the same time, cloud is also about resources, right? So it is about, ultimately, what is cloud, what is there in the cloud, what is there? It is physical machines, right? It's the same physical machine which you have on your laptop, is the same physical machine which is available over there. It is the same type of configuration. It has a memory that it provides, it has a storage that it provides, and it has processor that it provides. So it is the same infrastructure, right? It is not anything much different. The pattern is the same. It is the same infrastructure. Whatever is there available on your laptop or your computer, the same things are available inside the cloud. When we are saying we are accessing the cloud, we are actually accessing your machines. So if you are accessing your machines, then it is a type of cloud. On the cloud we have platform services, right? We can run Java program, we can run Python program, we can run databases, we can run many things. So on your infrastructure you can create your virtual machines, you can create your containers. Whatever you're doing on your local box, you are able to do it inside the cloud, or whatever you're doing in the cloud, you're able to do it on your local computer. So if cloud is providing infrastructure service, platform service, and software service, we are able to simulate that kind of environment even on a physical machine. So in a way, the answer, this may be little debatable, because it is definitely there is a point that it is not on demand. It is not on demand access, it is not ubiquitous, there is a limitation, but think of it this way also. You have this AWS cloud. You can go to on AWS cloud and you can say, I want a machine. And I'm not talking about virtual machine right now, I'm talking about the same physical machine that you have with you. You can say, I want a physical machine to myself. Nobody can access this, and you can ubiquitously access it on demand over the internet. So this is the part which Isha was saying. It is not available so easily. We cannot go to the anywhere. So which is good. That is a good point. Cloud. One of the requirement of cloud is it has to be ubiquitous. But one of the thing, when we are talking about cloud from resource perspective, we are talking about machines, infrastructure, platform, and software also. So so in a way, this is a cloud infrastructure, right? And since this physical machine is only available to yourself, it is a kind of a private cloud for yourself. So in the same way, your computer is also like a private cloud, which has its own infrastructure, which has its own, you can build your platform on it, you can create your own software on it. The only difference is the access is only to yourself. We call this kind of computers which is dedicated to you, we call them as dedicated instances. It is dedicated to you. Once it is dedicated to you, nobody else can use it. No, all the storage on that, whatever is connected on the dedicated machine, is yours. Nobody else can use it. So sometimes there is a need where we don't want virtual machine, we want a full dedicated machine, and because we have our own softwares that is we have been using so far, we have a license for that, which AWS may not be having it. So we take those softwares and we install it on a dedicated instance, and we operate over the cloud environment. So the answer is not totally no. Yes, it is a form of a private cloud. Okay. Okay. So where are we? Okay. So now that we have dwelled a little bit on the cloud, I'm going to ask. We're going to summarize on all things that we did. So what are the three services in cloud? When we at a high level, when we talk about services, IaaS, PaaS, SaaS. Very good. That's the right answer. So we have an infrastructure. On the infrastructure, we build a platform, and on the platform, we build a softwares. Very good. What are the 4 deployment models in cloud?
Private, public, community, and hybrid.
Very good. We have a private cloud. We spoke about private cloud right now. We have a public cloud. We have a hybrid cloud. So hybrid is cloud is where we are using both private and public together. So some files I may be having on my private cloud on my own computer or in my own company, and some files I might be having on the public cloud on the AWS, and I may be using it together over a single network. And community, very nice. And community cloud is very specific to the particular community, where the cloud is accessed only by the community. So community of teachers, community of colleges, or maybe community of artists. They have created their own cloud servers, and they're giving access to each other, and they're all part of the same cloud, but only the community has the access of all the resources for each other. So that is a community cloud. Very good. Which are the 3 major cloud platforms available today? Oh, excellent. Very good. AWS is a cloud platform. Azure is a cloud platform. Google Cloud, GCP is also a cloud platform. Very nice. So we are talking about infrastructure service, platform service, software service. Then we're talking about where this service is available, right? Either it is in the private cloud, or whether it is in the public cloud, or whether it is in a hybrid scenario, or whether it is in a community scenario, where these services are deployed. Deployed means where it is installed or where it is available. And then we have cloud platforms available, which is AWS, and so these are also these companies are also called as cloud providers. So name some of the technologies used to create cloud. cloud technologies. So which are the cloud technologies used? Now if somebody is providing you the cloud, they must be using some technology, right? What are the technologies they're using? VM, very good. So virtualization, right? We are using virtualization technology. So cloud is using VM technology, very nice. What are other technologies we are using? So virtualization is used to create virtual machines, right? And cloud is playing around everything that cloud does. Mostly is it is on virtual machines. It is not on dedicated machine. So understand the difference. Dedicated machine is the physical machine. Virtual machine is the built on a top of a physical machine. So if you have access to dedicated machine, then all the virtual machines created on the dedicated machine is also yours. So good point. Virtualization is one of the technologies used in cloud, but that is used to create only virtual machine, right? Now you have this lambda function. That is not a virtual machine. That is a code implementation service, right? A backend REST service. What is the technology I'm talking about? Run to code. No. Something what we have learned in the SEM 2. What was your SEM 2 all about? What practicals did you do? Then in SEM 3, what practicals did we do? What was the first practical that we did? First demo assignment. SOA, very good. So cloud, anything that you need to get through the services. It uses service oriented computing. If you want to access a virtual machine anywhere, you just cannot go directly to the machine. No, you have to call a function which is implemented by your REST service or a web service, and that REST service will be implementing a function which will internally create the virtual machine and give you back the status of the virtual machine. So your everything passes through this interface, right? Your service is there, as a in between broker which is helping you talk over the internet. Whatever you need, you tell the service will go back and do it. So service oriented computing, in which we use SOA architecture, which is implemented using REST services or SOAP services, right? Then we have AJAX and mashups that we spoke about. So AJAX and mashup is more of a front end technology, right, where you can connect to the backend REST services through AJAX without without having a front end. It is a kind of a the code which runs in your browser in the back. It goes back and connects to the service and gets you back whatever the data that you need, or maybe the REST service is doing whatever that you need to do. So everything is like a box of service on the cloud. You cannot get to the machine. So let me give a different color, maybe this, maybe a circle. So anytime you want to access anything, you have to travel through a service. So this can be your REST services, right, which may be implemented by Lambda, which may be implemented by API gateways. You cannot directly access without calling a function on any of the services. You have to make a service call from anywhere. This service call internally may give you the physical machine programmatically. It will create the machine for you. And then give you access to it. You will get username, password, and remote access. It will return you username, password, and give you maybe remote access. So whatever you require, you have to travel through services. So, and that's where the power of the services oriented computing comes. It can operate over the internet. It can be spread across the world. One service can call another service. So we have seen that kind of an architecture where we are having service orchestration, service choreography, and services can work with each other. And they can do whatever, they can make calls on the backends. So in this case it is it is creating a machine. It might be creating a website for you. So we spoke about Beanstalk, right? So in the back it will create a machine for you, install the web server for you, install some pages, default pages for you. Then you can go ahead and then give you access to that server. Then you can go ahead and upload your pages over here, your website pages over here, once you have got the Beanstalk service up and running. But it will create automatically the entire website, at least the web server, all the configuration part. You don't have to worry about it. It will do it for you automatically, but you have to make that service call. So service oriented computing is one of the technologies that is used. So I'm going to be deleting this. What is this? Interact between physical machine into virtual machine is port number and IP. Yeah, so everything is IP and port number based, but ideally we are operating over internet. So internet means we are going through a normal port which is 80. So there is very less restriction. So all the services will be available over port number 80, and it will be available using a link. We don't even need a IP address or something. It will just be a link that we will access, and through this link we will have access to all the services, so infrastructure service, software service, platform service, whatever you want. Service oriented computing will be used. What other technologies are used apart from this? So two technologies we spoke about: virtualization, service oriented computing. What are the other technologies? Now your cloud is spread across the entire. So SOAP we have covered, right? It is coming in service oriented computing, REST, SOAP, Ajax, Mashup, everything. So that is covered. That technology is covered. So what other technologies are used? If you want to build a cloud, you definitely require a virtualization technology. So if you're using virtualization technology, you can use software. Which other? So I don't want to talk about software right now, but right now I want to talk about maybe technologies. Okay. So what technologies, other technologies are needed? Just virtualization can provide you cloud? Maybe not. Does service oriented computing can provide you cloud? There may be something more, right? So cloud is available, all over the world, right? It is available inside your data center. Your data center is nothing but you can think of as a set of machines that are available in a data center, and these data centers are all over the world and they are connected to each other. And so you can create a lambda function inside a data center which is lying inside Mumbai, and there's another lambda function which is running in America, and your lambda function in Mumbai can call a lambda function in America. So what is that underlying technology? So we are using distributed computing technology, and when we talk about distributed computing technology, what are the different technologies we are looking at? Distributed and parallel computing, you can say. So what are the technologies in distributed computing? So we are having grids and clusters, right? Grid computing, cluster computing. Then we have utility computing, right? So what is utility computing? Very good, that's a good answer. It is pay as per use. So which means if I am using one virtual machine on the cloud, then I have to pay only for that much only. If I'm using it for 1 hour, then I have to pay only for 1 hour. If I'm using one machine, I should pay only for one VM machine. If I'm using for one, pay as per use. But in order to know who is accessing what for how long, so when we say what we are accessing, we are talking about processor, we are talking about memory, we are talking about, so when we are talking about accessing the cloud services, we want to know every detail. We want to know, even we cannot say they are just using the infrastructure, right? We have to know what if they have taken a machine, what type of processor they're using. If they're using a high-end processor, then the cost is more, and if it is a free tier, then you might have to be discounted, but everything is like your utility. When we say utility, it is like your electricity utility. That is like utility, right? Electricity utility, gas utility, water utility. In the same way, cloud utilities, just like infrastructure, software, platform, but we have to pay only for what we use. So utility computing, so there has to be a way to measure. Without measuring, if you cannot measure how much gas you use, then how can we pay as per use? No, right? We has to be a meter reading done. So in the same way, there has to be some technologies that should be available to measure everything as to who is using, what are they using, etc, etc, etc. So utility computing is also one of the technologies. So when we talk about cloud technologies, it is a combination of many things that come together. Now, did AWS create virtualization? No, AWS is providing the cloud. So how it is implementing virtualization? What are the softwares available to implement virtualization? Can you name some of the softwares? what are the softwares used to implement virtualization? If you had to create a cloud service, you had 4 computers, you have it in your network. Now you want to, provide virtualization. What softwares can you use? AWS, no, AWS is not a software. AWS is a service. Now that service is giving you what service? Virtualization service, yes. But is AWS, how it is providing virtualization service? How did you create a virtual machine in your demo? What software did you use? Salesforce.com is a software service, yes. So what softwares are we using to create? What software did you use to create virtual machine in your demo? VirtualBox, Oracle VM, very good. That is so you use some softwares, and what else? What other softwares are available? So the most famous one is VMware, right? VMware. Then we have Hyper-V, Microsoft Hyper-V, and then we have Zen. So the first two may not be, you may have to purchase it, but Zen is easily available for free. So internally AWS is using all these softwares. It is not that AWS created something altogether, everything on its own. No, maybe some things yes, but most of it is just installing that software, then giving you a front end to make the virtual machine request, and then you can go ahead and get the virtual machine. But in the back end all these softwares are running. So in the service oriented computing, it is using your REST service, SOAP service, all the service oriented computing technologies give you access to the services. Your OpenStack, if you have a look at your OpenStack software, that also you can, it gives you a front end to create machines, storages, etc, etc, etc. You can create a cloud using, it gives you that front end. In AWS we have AWS management console. So if you go to AWS website, you have that website. On the website, that website is called AWS management console. Citrix workspace, okay, I have not heard about Citrix workspace, but maybe that may be used, I think, but I'm not sure. So if you go to aws.com, so some of you may have created a free account, so you would have seen you get this front end screen. If you log into this account, you will get a screen where you can create machines and you can do anything. So that screen, that whole piece of website, that section of the website is called AWS management console, where through the console you're managing the entire AWS services. So we spoke about cloud services, we spoke about deployment models, we spoke about cloud platforms, and we spoke about cloud technologies. So everything is is working with each other, so it is not that services are different, but for the service to implement you require the technologies. And if you want a public cloud, then you have to go to the cloud provider which have their own cloud platform, and then you have your own architecture where you can say I am having a private cloud, public cloud, hybrid cloud, community cloud. Then you're dealing with architectures. So you're dealing with almost all of this depending on your requirement whenever you're talking about cloud. Okay, so okay. So save this diagram. So now we spoke about the technologies, we understood what cloud is. So now we'll be going a little back and looking at the history of cloud. So when we say a cloud is your physical machine also could be a private cloud. So the question is, when did cloud begin? Was it existing before? So AWS was the first company to get into the cloud. So before this first cloud provider, did cloud exist? So that's the question. When did cloud begin? Did it exist before these big companies came and said we are the cloud and you heard about cloud? So Aditya says yes, Isha says yes. So cloud was always there, right? We never use that word cloud. So what word did we use? Before cloud term was not used, what we were using? What was the term used? So if machines were there, that means cloud was there. So we understood that much. But where the machines are provided, distributed computing, yes, that's a technology, but distributed computing is connecting to machines. These machines are we have a set of machines, right? They are in, I just now spoke about that, about the space where there are a lot of machines and they are in the network, and everyone connects to this set of machines and connect to this network. What is that entire set called? So we moved from physical machine. So let's go ahead with this. Now I'm going to draw a diagram a little bit. So we have one machine over here, okay? So when you say machine, means we have processor 1, memory 1, storage 1, okay? And then cloud was always existing, right? So people were using, let's say there's a banking sector. So we have banking employees, right? And so we have many employees. One employee, it connects to the backend server, right? And this person may be having a computer of his own. Which connects to the server in the backend. But do we really have only one server in a banking sector always? Or do we have many servers? Are there only one employee in a bank, or are there many employees? Many employees, right? It can be one or more, and there can be even one or more servers. Different servers. This server may be used, to run your website. So all website, maybe you may use one or two servers to run your websites. Then some other server. What are the different types of servers we are aware about? So that is web server. Then we have storage, file server, where all our files, all the employees may be saving the files, right, to the server. So it's not only one server. It is like this is server number 2, and this is used to store. This is a file server maybe, and you may have one or more file server depending on how big your bank is and how spread it is, and everybody is accessing all these servers. So these are usually available inside what? These are all servers connected, right? It is available data centers. A data center is also a cloud. A machine is also a cloud. But this cloud, since it is only for the banking people, it is called private cloud. So cloud was always existing. Banks were always working, servers were already available, data centers were always there. So cloud was always there, which means we're talking about private clouds were always there. AWS was not there. There was no public cloud, but there was private clouds always there. And this private clouds, it is not necessary these servers, this server may be in America, and this file server may be in Africa. It's not necessary that they all this, but the thing is, this data center may be in America. So in the same way, there may be another data center. So data center 1 and data center 2, and inside the data center we have all these machines. Basically they are all servers. So data center 2. So banks were able to connect to the data center even if it is in a different location, even if it is Africa, and there are machines running over here. And this data center is connected to this data center. So So they are using what technology over here to connect the servers, and computers are spread across the world. So what technology is used to connect to all the servers residing in different data centers in different locations of the world? How is it possible? What technology are they using to connect to these private clouds? They are using the very same technologies. And what was the technology? Virtualization, services, service oriented computing, then we spoke about grid and cluster, grid computing, cluster computing. But in the private sector, we usually don't say pay as per use, right? We don't say, oh, how much did you use? We don't check. It is like our own home. So it was not like pay as per use, but we still definitely want to know how it has been utilized. We still need to secure it, and we still need to do everything, but we are not taking payments from the employees for using those servers. It is all in-housely built, but the technologies that were used, it is the same. So you could have used any of the technologies, or all this technology is still in use even before public cloud came into existence. So private cloud, so cloud was already existing, the technologies were already existing, private companies were already having their own clouds, but the cost for this kind of setup is very big. Maybe a big bank has a lot of money, they can invest in. Not everybody can invest in this kind of setup. So the question is, how did public cloud begin? Where was the beginning? Why suddenly one day somebody felt public cloud should be started, or something like that? Where is this? How did we move from here to here, from private cloud into public cloud? So as we said, private cloud was there, companies, but it was very restricted only for the employees. Not everyone had access. So any answers? Okay, so let me ask a different question. Why did we move from private cloud to public cloud? Why companies, big companies, which have their own private cloud, are moving to public cloud? Why? What sense does it make? Public cloud belongs to some other company. Why should we approach them? Why should we use our data? Data can be compromised, security issue can be there. Why are we moving from private cloud? Why companies, all the companies of the world are moving from private cloud into public cloud? What is the most basic reason why would you move to a public cloud and not have your own private cloud? Any answers? So that's a perfect answer. That's a very good answer. It is cost effective. Cost is driving. Reduce cost, right? But the question is, I already have my data center. I already spent my money to buy the data center. So I'm not going to have more, data centers in need. But why would I still go to public cloud then? I have my data centers, I have my computers, I've already invested in. Why companies are still going to public cloud? Because they already had the setup for all these years, they were already running fine. What is the one of the second main reasons why companies and everybody is moving towards cloud? One was the cost, it is less cost. So everybody going to the cloud, so cloud provider can give it for cheap. What is another reason can you think of? Why would you have a machine, you have a laptop of your own. You bought it, you paid for it, the deal is done. You have your own private machine, own private cloud. Why would you go and ask public cloud, I want your machine? Why? You already have your machine. Increase scalability. Yes, that could be the option, that if I want to expand. That is a good answer. But let us assume you have everything that you needed. You on day number 1 you bought a laptop computer with 1 terabyte, and you said this 1 terabyte is very good for me. It is running all the big softwares. I've got a quad processor. Why would you move? Now you have got everything with you. Why would you move? No. Public cloud are serverless. No, not necessary. They have serverless services, but not everything is serverless. Why would you move to the cloud? You have a laptop, right? You have a machine. Why would you go and today go to public cloud? So let me ask a question in a different way now. You have a 1 terabyte machine on day number 1. After 4 years, will this 1 terabyte be good enough for you? Will your machine be same healthy? Like, do we grow from, we are born young, we are strong, then do we grow old? Does the same thing happen to the infrastructure? Does it grow old? Will there be additional cost incurred later down the line on your machine? Very good, that is the answer, right? No maintenance. If you have your own data center, if you bought your own machine, tomorrow if your machine becomes old, some electronics goes this, you have to maintain it, you have to find that person, number 1. So we have to, where will we get computer engineers? So sometimes we may not get it, or even if we get, you do not know the cost. So again, reduced maintenance. If you go to serverless, then there is no maintenance at all. Serverless is equal to no maintenance, zero maintenance. And if you're buying your own, if you're kind of renting your own virtual machine, or especially if you're using your own dedicated machine on the public cloud, then definitely yes, some level of maintenance means you're not maintaining the hardware, but you're maintaining the configurations. You can say username, passwords, who has access, the network access, all those. So it's it's kind of a shared responsibility, we say. Some part, the infrastructure in public cloud, the hardware will be taken care by the cloud provider, that is AWS. But that hardware, you have been given, you are installing an operating system, you have been given the username password. Now who is responsible for that username password? You, right? Now if you are giving that username password to somebody else, that person also can access the same machine, so that AWS cannot be responsible for. So responsibility is always shared. If the machine goes down, if there is an earthquake, if the data center has come down, then AWS will say we have another data center, we are going to provide it. All the hardware infrastructure underlying, that is my responsibility. The hardware, the security of the hardware, who is entering the property, it's ultimately some facility, right? It is which is physically somewhere, it is some building or something. So the protecting that building with security guards and with all the mechanisms, that AWS says, yeah, we are going to take care. But when they tell you you can create a virtual machine on my physical machine, that virtual machine, partly you become responsible for it, because you have created that, you are giving the access, you are making it public or private. So responsibility is always shared. So the idea is, public cloud, if there is a public cloud, the cost is less, the maintenance is less. So that is how this idea of public cloud began. So the question is, where did this idea begin? So we understood private cloud was already existed, we understood how did it began, but where did this idea begin of moving towards public cloud to reduce cost, to reduce maintenance? Where did it begin?
When the business gets expanded, no more need for storage and accessories.
No, usually businesses, the way they used to think in the past is they would build their own data centers, they would invest in more computers, they would have their own private property, they will have their own maintenance. So can delete this. Let me save this first. So the question is, where did this idea of reducing cost and reducing maintenance begin? Who felt the need first? Who were the first people to feel this need? So we're looking at history now a little bit. Okay. So it was the USA government. Now US government had, we spoke about two data centers, one data center, two data centers. They had more than 12,000 data centers that ran the entire operations of US government. So just like there's a banking sector, there would be a government sector, right, which are having their own cloud. So US government had all that kind of technologies, and they have that best of best people, and but maintaining these data centers was not easy, right? Cost is escalating. It is a very big, this is like it's better to focus on issues, the like public issues, rather than on data centers. No, your mind gets constantly occupied. Oh, I need money for more data centers. Constantly there's a to run the show we need all this. We are we need technical people. We need all these facilities. We need space. And technology, if the technology get advanced, then we have to invest more money. It's a very big, and it'll keep on increasing, right? This need will never reduce. So this is when, in approximately somewhere, I think, I'm not sure the exact date, but somewhere in 2005 or 8, somewhere there, we'll have to look at it. Somewhere at that particular moment, internet was also available, the REST services were available, the technologies were available, data centers were available, but suddenly there was a need to look at this cost factor, and that is where an agency called NIST was created to look at the possibility of what to do, and that is where NIST then it came up with some, like, they looked into how these data centers are operating, what is getting operated. So they look at business cases, so we say business use cases. Then they looked at the technical requirements. They looked, those are like technical use cases. So use cases is basically used in your UML design. So basically it's it depicts the scenarios. So when we say business use cases, then we're talking about business scenarios, technical scenarios, so we'll talk a little bit more on that. So basically this NIST agency was the first agency that was employed or created by US government to look into this problem of saving the money. And that is when, before you create something new, you have to understand how the old thing is working. Now if you want to build a new car, you have to see how the current car is working. Then you have to see, you have to study the parts. You have to look at okay, what is the car used for? That is a business use case. What is the car used for? If it is a Mercedes, then it may be luxurious, that is a business use case. That may be the business use case requirement. The technical use case requirement could be, it has to be running on in particular engines, or those are the technical scenarios. And so in a use case, basically we have to know who are the actors involved and what are the scenarios involved. So each scenario is same as use cases. So what are the actors? Actors are basically in a use case diagram, all the entities that are interacting with the scenario. So US government is a actor in this whole scenario. The people inside, in this process are the actors. They are functioning in these scenarios. In a banking, bank employees, your softwares, these are all actors which are interacting with your scenarios to do something, have a business case or technical case. So actors can be people, can be softwares, systems, etc. So NIST, they defined, they had to come up with the cloud definition, in the sense what cloud means to them, in the sense what cloud is right now versus what cloud should be doing in future, how we will move from place A to place B, how the cost will be reduced from 100 to 20, something like that. And then it kept on moving forward. Then the question was, if I am building my cloud having a particular understanding, if I am building a machine, if I am building a car, now how do I, if somebody else is also building a car, and we want both the cars to work together, have a connection between the two, if the designs are different, then it is going to be difficult, right? So there has to be some common way to design multiple cars, multiple Mercedes, right? If you have to build multiple Mercedes, there has to be some particular procedures or particular techniques that you will use. Like if you are going to McDonald's, it's the same burger that the taste is same, the size is same, the quantity is same, everything is same. Why does it happen? Because they are following a particular procedure, particular process, a particular standard, a particular techniques. And in the same way, if NIST also came up with standards, they also defined, so they defined what is cloud, what the cloud should be. So cloud, so when we say NIST cloud definition, cloud computing definition, that is what it means. NIST is an agency which initially came up with this definition, the cloud computing definition. They initially came up with this reference architecture. We talk about infrastructure service, platform service, software service, but who came up with these ideas? It is the NIST. They initially thought of all this, that if we are building a cloud, it has to be organized in such and such a way. If you are providing a particular service, so these are the scenarios that we want to address for US government. These are the technical use cases from the cloud perspective, and they came up with standards, not only one standard. So there may be a standard for infrastructure service. There may be, so this may be S1. There may be another standard. So because everything, if I am providing an infrastructure in data center 1, I should be able to create an infrastructure in the same way in another data center. Unless we follow the same standard, we will not be able to produce the same structure, or the same product or the same service. So just as there are infrastructure service standard, there may be platform standard for platform services. So there is standard for everything, no? Not everything that exists in cloud, there has to be a particular standard for it. For softwares that are created, for if it is infrastructure, again in infrastructure, infrastructure has a lot of components, right? The most basic things we spoke about, it has a physical machine, then it has virtual machine, then today we have containers, and then we have networks, then we have storages. What is the standard followed for each of this? Every component of infrastructure will have its own standard. So we and that is how things started building up, and that is what this first part section about of unit 1 is about. NIST cloud reference architecture. Who are the actors? What are the use cases we are looking at? What are the standards we are looking at? So all of this is, and then it goes into security also, right? So now when we say security is not only for infrastructure, right? Security is also for your software. You have username, password, that is the first level of security. If your username, password is encrypted and passing over the network using HTTPS, so we have, that is a second level of security. We have spoken about authentication, authorization, and HTTPS is all about encryption and decryption, right? Cryptography. But security is not only at the software level. Security means I have to make sure my platform is also secured. If I am having a Java software which is used by many users, all people are creating Lambda function on my platform, and and they're creating Java functions. I have to protect that platform, no? So the core access of the platform cannot be given to everybody. We are just giving access for the program. programmatic access only for within a restricted environment. So security standards are not specific only for infrastructure, platform or software, it is across. So when we talk about security standards, we are looking at everything actually. So standards have to be defined, so so a lot of standards are still getting developed, and there are standards which have been implemented by different cloud providers. Then there are some standards which are not yet implemented. So standards are also in a, there are all these documents, whatever the standard documents are, they are in a different phase. So some are not approved state, some are in market, market as everybody is accepting the standard, like HTTP is a acceptable standard. So we have a market acceptability, it has a status. So every standard will have a set of status. Okay, so whenever we say, oh, you are using this standard, is it marketable, market acceptability? Oh yeah, then I will go for it. Is it commercial, in the sense, are you paying for it? Commercially available status. So there is a standard, but it is commercially available. So like Mercedes is saying, see, I am creating my car, or maybe I am creating a rocket today, and it is a very specific design, but it is not available for the market. It is, that standard is available commercially, you have to pay for it. So some standards may be commercially available, and some people may go for it depending on how critical that standard is. And this is how this entire story of cloud began, and that is where the first company to create a cloud using these standards, most of the standards, was AWS. And in AWS, US government gets a special region called US Gov. So I hope what you know what regions are. So regions are geographical area. So in that area, whatever there may be data centers inside that area, and inside the data center, of course, there is your machines. So US government has their own region within which means they have their own region of within which there are a lot of data centers. And then we for the normal public, we have data centers in Mumbai, in basically all over the world, right? So nobody can really access the US Gov unless US government authorizes. We require US authorization, or you must be an employee or of the US government to access this or that. So so US government is having a plan to move from here to here. So they are not even saying we are going to invest in data centers. They are saying we are going to use a public provider. We are going to reduce our cost. We are going to reduce our machine maintenance. We are going to reduce our data centers also, one by one data center eliminate at a time. And we are going to have our own cloud provider. And AWS is in the forefront over here, which provides the US Gov region. So if you go on the AWS management console, you can choose the region that you want to operate. So US Gov region is something that you are not authorized to get in. You cannot create machines on data centers which is part of US Gov region. You can create it in Mumbai region, any other region, but not US Gov. So this kind of also puts a question, right? Where is India in this plan? Do they have a set of their own data centers, their own cloud, running all the softwares to operate? So but US government were the initial forerunners in this, and as far as this cloud computing is concerned, public cloud computing. So we did so we have not really started with a syllabus as so far, but we have touched, I think you have got a gist of what is coming up in the next in these presentations. So let us look at so in this presentation we will cover the NIST definition of cloud computing, cloud computing reference architecture, cloud computing use cases, and cloud computing standards. What is the time? Yeah, I think we can read a bit, just few slides. So where is the link? Okay, so I want one of you to open this link and start reading few slides. Maybe you can just cover the few slides. Okay, I'm going to stop presenting. Somebody has to open the document and read it. So Chinmay, can you access the document? Maybe you can access the document and read. So sorry, so Chinmay, can you open the document and read?
Sir, I'm actually on my mobile phone.
Oh, okay. Okay. So who can take? Oh, sorry. What is it? So who can read? Okay. So let's maybe. Amruta, is it possible for you to open that link and read?
Should I start?
Yeah. Oh yeah, Sandhya, you can.
I'm not
Oh,
sure if I'm audible.
yeah, you're audible.
Yeah,
Please
that
go
was
ahead.
on laptop only.
No problem. Thank you. Yeah, you can go ahead, open the document and start reading. So present your screen. Yes.
NIST Cloud Reference Architecture Part 1. So here we'll be studying architecture, actors and use cases. So in this presentation we'll cover the following: the NIST definition of cloud computing reference architecture, cloud computing use cases, cloud computing standards. Below is the reference. Okay, NIST stands for National Institute of Standards and Technology. It was founded in 1901 to support the US government in matters of standards, measurements, and technology. The US government has returned 12,000 plus data centers. The US government spends around $600 billion for its IT needs in 10 years. History, as cloud computing was emerging in the markets, the US government felt the need to move to cloud, but cloud was not matured as yet. NIST was assigned the task of looking into existing cloud use case scenarios and standards if necessary, come up with new use cases and standards if necessary. The cloud first document was drafted in 2010 with some key goals for US federal agencies, such as goal to move from its data centers to cloud, reduce the total data centers by 800 by 2015, then save 2.7 billion every year.
Yeah.
As a result, NIST came up
Sandhya,
with
can you go back one slide? Yeah. Can you go back one slide? Yeah. No. Not this slide. The one where cloud first was mentioned. No, that slide. Yeah, so this is the first document which was created by NIST. You know, when NIST was given the responsibility in 2010, so I think AWS was there in 2009. So it seems like AWS was not really created for US government, but when AWS had their own cloud, they started thinking about this, and in 2010, by 2010. This document was ready, cloud first. And what were the three goals in that document? There was a goal to move from data center to cloud, and second, the goal was to reduce the data centers by 800. So if there is 12,000 data center, that means by 2015, in 5 years, it should be 11,200, means 800 data centers are not required. Then the question is, how do we migrate from those 800 data centers to cloud? You have to have your migration strategy. So and that is where cloud first document had this specified this goal, and how much money they would have saved every year because of this movement. They would have saved $2.7 billion every year. So that is the first document created by NIST to advise US government to move their data centers to cloud. Now you can go ahead, Sandhya.
Then NIST came up with guidelines for US federal agencies, which included definition of cloud computing. These guidelines would eventually then be followed by all cloud stakeholders in the US business. So NAFTA has a special region allocated just for the US government. NIST definition of cloud computing. Cloud computing is a model for enabling ubiquitous, convenient, on-demand network access to a shared pool of configurable computing resources. Example: networks, servers, storage, that can be provisioned, released with minimal management.
Okay, just hold on this on the definition. Yeah, so this is the definition given by NIST. They said it should be ubiquitous, it should be convenient, it should be on demand. On demand means I get the machine whenever I needed it, and on demand access to what? To networks, to servers, to application, to services that can be rapidly provisioned, means rapidly provided, means quickly. I should be quickly able to get the machine. I should be able to quickly get access to the platform, and with minimal management effort or service provider interaction. There should be no person sitting on the other side of the office and picking up the phone, and telling you that okay, we are doing your job and come tomorrow. No, it should be all automatic. There should be very less service provider interaction. So there should be no interaction from AWS. Everything should be done quickly, easily, and with minimum steps, and it should be quickly provided. So all these things have to be there, and that is what this definition of cloud computing is. If in your question, if they ask you the cloud computing definition, this is the definition you have to go for. Okay, you can go ahead, Sandeep.
The NIST cloud model is composed of 5 models, 3 service models, 4 deployment models. The 5 essential characteristics of NIST cloud is on-demand self-service. That is, the consumer should be able to laterally self-serve with the computing needs such as server time or network storage whenever he wishes to. Broad network access. The consumer should be able to access the cloud service via the internet from any type of digital device using thin client programs such as browser. Then resource pooling. The resources on cloud should be pooled to serve different consumers using multi-tenant model, with the consumer having the ability to choose a region at higher level of abstraction. Rapid elasticity. The consumer service needs should be scaled as much as the consumer needs it automatically. Measured service. The service offered should be measurable, which should be transparent to both consumer and provider.
Okay, hold on over here. So here we are talking about two parties. One is a provider who is giving you services, and other is your consumer. So when we talk about consumer, the US government is a consumer, AWS is a cloud provider, and US government is a cloud consumer. And when we access services on AWS, we are also consumers. So understand the difference between consumer and provider. Now the first point says on demand self service. So what does self service means? Self service means there is no person waiting to serve you. It's like your buffet in your restaurant, right? It is self service. You go to the table, you take whatever food you want, you eat your own food, everything is self service. You don't require some person to give you food and all. It is self service. In the same way, whatever services are required on the cloud, it should be self-service. You should be able to go to the website and say, I want a machine, I want to start the machine, I want to stop the machine, I want to delete the machine, I want the storage. So it is self-service. On demand. On demand means whenever I need it. So 12 o'clock in the night I wake up and I want a machine for 5 minutes, I should be able to get it. If I want it for 10 days, I should be able to get it. If I want 10 servers, I should be able to get it. Whatever I demand, I should be able to go to AWS, and self-service means I should be able to do it on my own without the least service provider interaction. And broad network access means that is very obvious, that no matter, even if I'm in India, America, Africa, it doesn't matter, or what device I have, mobile device, computer, laptop, my the device that I'm using to access the service should not matter. It should be that easy. It should be broad network access. Resource pooling means I share the resources. If I've got one machine, we spoke about multi-tenant model in the last semester. So multi-tenant is all about the same machine is used by different customers. Each consumer is coming and creating their own machine, and there may be 10 different consumers using the same machine. And then rapid elasticity, which means if I need to grow, if I need to grow from 10 computers to 100 computers, it should be rapid, it should be elastic, like a rubber band, it can expand. And like a rubber band, it should also be able to be reduced. If I want to move from 100 computers to 10 computers, I should be able to switch off with a very easy, in a very easy way through the website. So as I told you, on AWS we have the AWS management console, right? That is the website where through which once you log in, you can do all these things. You can increase from 10 to 100, 100 to 10. You can get it in any part of the region. So you just select the region. You can say in Mumbai I want 10 computers, in America I want 100 computers. But all of this has to be measured. We said, right, this is the characteristic of the cloud that has to be there. Unless you measure, you cannot make business out of it, or you cannot know the performance of it, or you cannot look into the issues. So the service offered should be measurable, which should be transparent to both consumer and provider. So the consumer should also know what he is using. He used a computer only for 1 second, he used one processor or only 1 MB of memory. Every detail the consumer should know. It should be transparent, not only to the provider but also to the consumer. Whatever provider is measuring, the consumer should know in detail. So these are the 5 characteristics of cloud. So when you're talking about cloud computing, you have to give definition, you have to give characteristics. Okay, you can move forward, Sandhya. Next slide.
The 3 cloud service models as per NIST are software as a service, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service. So software as a service, the capability provided to the consumer is to use the provider's applications running on a cloud infrastructure that are accessible via thin cloud client from any digital device without having to manage or control the underlying operating system, storage, servers or network. Limited user configuration may be allowed, which is application specific. Then platform as a service, the capability provided to the consumer to deploy on or acquire applications created using programming languages, libraries, services and supported by the provider without having to define, manage or control the underlying operating system, servers, network, storage. The limited application configuration may be allowed, which is programming language detail. Then infrastructure as a service, the capability provided to the consumer is to provision services, storage, network and other fundamental computing resources where the consumer can deploy, manage and control the operating system. Limited networking including firewall, storage and applications without having to define, managing or controlling the underlying physical infrastructure. Should I move?
Yeah, just hold on. Hold on. So in the software as a service, the last line says limited user configuration may be allowed, which is application specific. So basically what they're trying to say is you may allow the user to specify what part of the software access you want to give, how much access you want to give. Some limited user can configure if they're using software as a service. And if they're using platform as a service, again it says limited application hosting environment configuration. So you can basically configure your platforms to a certain extent, and so that is what everything means over here. But what of the last one? Infrastructure, limited networking, where consumer can deploy, manage and control the operating system. Limited networking including firewall, storage, application without actually defining, managing, controlling the underlying physical infrastructure. So that last words are important, without actually defining, managing or controlling the physical infrastructure, which means your physical infrastructure is your physical machine. So the user should be able to create a machine without actually touching your physical machine. If something happens to your virtual machine, it should not affect your physical machine. So so when it comes to infrastructure level, the controls are divided. It's a shared responsibility. The infrastructure is not something AWS will allow you to touch. Anything that you build over the infrastructure, like virtual machines or containers or platforms or softwares, you will have some control to control it. So yeah, you can go ahead, Sandhya.
The four cloud deployment models as per NIST are cloud. The cloud infrastructure is provisioned for open use by the general public. It may be owned, managed, and operated by business, academic, or government organization or some combination of them. Such a cloud will exist premises of the cloud provider. Private cloud. The cloud infrastructure is provisioned for exclusive use by a single organization comprising multiple consumers. Example, business units. It may be owned, managed, and operated by the organization, a third party, or some combination of them, and it may exist on or off premises. Hybrid cloud. The cloud infrastructure is a composition of two or more distinct cloud infrastructures, that is, community or public, that remain unique entities but are bound together by standardized or proprietary technology that enables data and application portability. Example, cloud bursting for load balancing between clouds. Community cloud. The cloud infrastructure is provisioned for exclusive use by a specific community of consumers from organizations that have shared concerns. Example, mission, security requirements, policy, and compliance consideration. It may be owned, managed, and operated by one or more of the organizations in the community, a third party, or some combination of them, and it may exist on or off premises.
Okay, now hold on over there. So the first says public cloud. It says such a cloud will exist on the premises. Can you go back one slide? Sandhya, can you go back one slide? Yeah. So on the public cloud, it says it is operated by business. So yeah. So yeah. So on the public cloud, it says it is owned, managed, and operated by business. So which is the business we are talking about? We are talking about AWS cloud provider, right? That is the business. Then in private cloud, it says it is owned, managed, and operated by organization, third party, or some combination of them, and it may exist on or off premises. So what does it is a private cloud, and we are talking about on premises, but what does off premises means? It means if you have a bank, so if it is a global bank, let's say it is a Hong Kong bank. Now Hong Kong bank, you may have your consumers in Mumbai, but their servers may not necessarily, all the servers may not be necessarily inside Mumbai, right? Some servers will be in Mumbai, but some servers will be in Hong Kong. So that's why we are talking about on or off premises. And then in hybrid cloud we are talking about application portability or data portability, and we are saying example cloud bursting. What does that mean basically? So it means that let's say you have an office and you are having 10 computers, and that 10 computers has got some amount of memory and some amount of hard disk. Now what will happen suddenly, you require 100 computers on your premises. It is a hybrid cloud. When you are in your private cloud right now and you have only 10 computers in your private cloud, how will you go from 10 to 100 using the same application? So whatever applications are running on the on your on premises, so let me draw a diagram maybe. Sandhya, let me present this for 1 minute. Or maybe just let me explain, maybe later we will talk about cloud bursting. So cloud bursting is basically 10 computers are there in the private cloud. I'm adding 90 more computers on the public cloud, and whatever applications are running inside my organization within the private cloud, I'm porting it, means I'm transferring it, I'm creating a copy of it in the public cloud also, so that I don't feel the difference. Yeah, can you stop presenting, Sandhya, for 1 minute so that I can go ahead and present? Yeah, you can stop presenting. Okay. Okay, so we were looking at hybrid cloud, and it was saying it should allow what? Cloud busting. So the question is, what is cloud busting, right? So I try to explain it, but now I'll explain it using the diagram. First of all, hybrid cloud means there is a public cloud. So some resources are running on public cloud, or maybe some machines are running on public cloud and some machines are running on your own private cloud in your own company maybe. So let's say there are 10 computers over here, or maybe let's say there are 2 computers. Okay, and there are people, your customers, so let's say this is your private cloud, and here public cloud you don't have any computer right now. Now you have 2 computers and you have a customer over here. So let's draw him, and he is accessing, and there are many customers which suddenly start using your servers, right? He comes in and he uses it. So let's say all the customers, they have taken away all your private cloud. Now the load has increased suddenly, and now there are no computers available on the private cloud. And there was this Java application which was running, let's say, on your computer. That is what this user was using. So there was a Java program that was running on this computer, and he was and this fellow also is using the same Java program, but he was using this machine, the other machine. Oops. Let me draw this. So now this third consumer comes in. He is not getting any computer. Now the thing is, what to do now? He will get an error, right? There is no computer available, there is no program available. In such cases, your private cloud should have a connection with the automatically. The moment the third customer comes in, he should be able to travel over this. Automatically the new machine should be created on the public cloud. So suddenly the cloud is bursting. The private cloud was small, now suddenly it has bursted, it has expanded. Another machine was automatically created over here. Oops. Machine was created over here. Not only the machine has to be created, but this entire application, Java application that you have, it has to be ported. That is what it means, application portability. It has to be moved, or not moved exactly, but it should be replicated over here and created on this environment, which is not your local environment, right? Which is your cloud environment. this third consumer or your third customer should never know where this third computer is. It is on the public cloud. It has automatically extended and created a copy on the public cloud, because the private cloud all the computers have already been utilized, and that is what this means, cloud bursting. So in a hybrid cloud, cloud bursting should be available, right? Whenever more people are coming, they're accessing a private cloud, suddenly there's a need. And the thing is, why initially you have put it in the private cloud and not in the public cloud? Maybe to save the cost. Maybe you're saying first, if I have two computers, let me use my computer first and I will save the cost. I don't have to pay to the public cloud. Only when I require, I will create instances on the public cloud, and that is the only time I will burst my cloud and expand it to the public cloud. And the moment this customer goes away, so let's say he is no longer there now, he finished using your application, the cloud should return back to normal, right? So this link, this machine should automatically be deleted and everything. So this is called scalability, right? It is scalability, elasticity. It is expanding and contracting as per needs, and the cost is also optimized, right? If you're not using any more public cloud, the cost is not reduced. You're paying only for the time that you created the instance, the time that you use the instance. So that is what is cloud bursting. So this will be seen, I think, in one of your units 2 or unit 3, where we are talking about techniques and we are talking about architectures. With this, we think I will take the attendance. So people, if they have missed providing the attendance, then I don't know. Okay, what is today's date? March 13th. Aditya. Harsh, Isha, Lucy, Priscilla, Sandhya, So with that, we complete our first lecture. I thought we will cover a lot more, but it's not easy to move that fast, because the concepts have to be explained and understood. So is there any other questions? We will be having a next lecture tomorrow. Let me stop the recording.